What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Christian Witch Podcast. I'm your host, Chosen, also known as at Christian Witch HTX, over on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and you can find me on Twitter at Christian Witch X. I would love if you go follow me and say what's up because I feel like I don't really do much over there. But anyways, we're back. I'm joined by my beautiful, wonderful co-host, Lux. Lux, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Lux over at luxintuitivetherapy.com. You can also find me on Facebook at Intuitive Therapy by Lux. I'm offering readings and like metaphysical counseling right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go check out my website. You can schedule or book an appointment online. You can reach out to me on Instagram too, Lux Intuitive Therapy. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And if you want to find me or the Elysium Academy of Mystical Arts, where I train people in witchcraft, healing, psychic development, mediumship, and a dedicated healing course soon, you can go to christianwitchhx.com. You can also book readings with me there, healings, consultations, things like that. But yeah, we're back, and we're going to be talking about the elements today. We're going to be having a relaxed conversation. This isn't an exhaustive thesis or anything like that, but I think it's something that some people really don't talk about often. And if they do, it's very, I don't know,
I think it's seen as basic material.
very basic.
And then you start really studying them and you
Mm-hmm.
start really looking at them because I wrote off, oh, I understand the elements.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, it's water, it's fire, it's like earth, okay, the ground, like
Yeah.
it's air, it's
So much
wind.
more.
I understand the elements. What else is there? Well, there's a lot more actually.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, really? You don't have a connection like that?
Well, it's because I ignorantly wrote it off as
Yeah.
this is just basic beginner material. Next,
Yeah.
you know what I
And
mean?
I tend to have, okay, to be fair, I tend to have the tendency to lead more into there's got to be some depth in everything.
There has to be something more.
There has to be something more in this.
Yeah.
Something deeper. So, anyways, okay. Well, let's roll the introduction, and yeah, we'll be right back. Alrighty, so we're back. It's been several weeks. Like,
Yeah.
it's been a hot minute.
Mm-hmm,
I think we were wiped out after March. We were
Mhm.
busy.
Yeah,
several
April's a
weeks.
busy month for me.
Yeah, March
sure.
and April. Yeah, I can't believe we're at the end of April. Actually.
I know.
Oh my God. Hey, wait a minute. We're at the end of April. Something important is supposed to be happening this week. I'll think about it. Anyways, well, we're here and we're ready to talk about the elements. So
Where do we even begin?
I know, where do we begin? So I guess the approach I like to take most of the time
Okay.
is because these are the messages I get often.
Mhm.
People don't know really anything and they don't know what to believe when they read stuff because there's so many people saying the same thing over and over in different languages and it's confusing. And then once you get past all the like semantics and differentiating beliefs, it's like, okay, well, what's accurate, what's inaccurate, or what has the most merit, I guess. Like, what has the most, I don't know, like, for instance, like, ceremonial magic. Like, the more you learn, you're like, oh, I understand why basic witchcraft
Right.
does this now,
Yeah.
you know? So, I guess, what are the elements in your mind? Actually,
like-
do not go on an exhaustive thesis.
I know. I feel like I need to get a pencil and a paper out to kind of like
We need a whiteboard session.
or a whiteboard or something to kind of keep my thoughts on track so I don't lose if we have any beginners listening.
Yeah.
So in the simplest terms, where would I start? I would probably say that the elements have physical manifestations, but that's not all they are.
Yeah.
They're not just the flame coming out of a fireplace or a campfire or the flame coming off of a candle. It's not just that when you talk about the element of fire.
Mhm.
There's some metaphysical properties as well. There's psychological properties, there's spiritual properties, and it's understanding that these elements exist and permeate multiple levels of reality.
Yeah.
And so when you start diving into the elements, you start touching on cosmology, really.
I know. That's why I was like,
Yeah.
is this too much?
It may be, so in Ptolemaic cosmology, you have the earth plane, so that's where we're at now, and of course all of the elements permeate where we're at now. We
Mhm.
have fire, we have the fire in all of its element. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have a spiritual aspect of fire. We have a psychological aspects of fire. We have the physical manifestation of fire. We have all of the elements here. But then they say that there are these elemental realms. So there are these realms that exist close to us, because people talk about the elemental realms being some of the easiest realms to really start to step out into, so to speak, and contact. And the entities that dwell there, called the elementals, are some of the easiest entities, spiritual entities anyway, to start working with or contacting, or at least seeing. If you don't want to have any type of interaction with them, you can at least perceive them with the mind's eye. So,
and this is where I take my students in, I don't know what week it is. I think it's like week 11 in the 15-week course. Is we journey to all of the elemental realms in that class.
Yeah.
And it's just mind-blowing hearing their stories and like what they pick up and see, because like it's one thing to do it yourself, it's another to like watch others and like you get excited for them.
Yeah.
And understanding it's like, okay, now there's elemental realms, but they also exist in all these other ones.
Yeah.
And I think
I want to talk about how that's possible.
I was going to say, I think you have a good working theory, so to speak.
Well, we'll touch on the occult philosophy when we use terms like higher realm, right? So that's implying that, okay, there is a realm as a place. That's what we think. A realm is a place separate from the place that we're in now. That's what the term realm implies. And it is occurring somehow differently than we are now. But the thing is, and when we talk about the astral worlds, that realms, planes, worlds, these are all interchangeable terms being used, because the fact is that our language just doesn't have really the vernacular to really explain what's going on here.
Yeah.
What's actually happening is all of these worlds, realms, planes, they're all happening on top of one another. They're all happening within, without, throughout, within. They're all happening in one single space, if that makes sense. So where me and Chosen are sitting right now, in this exact space, there is an elemental realm of fire. There is an elemental realm of earth, of air, of water. There's an astral realm right here. You know, it's not a spatial thing that we're calling out. It is, it's
almost
really,
like energetic layers of existence.
Energetic layer. That's probably the best word I could use without going into New Age terms like vibratory frequency.
Which sometimes work.
they work in their purest form. They've been so overused that I'm actually trying to distance myself from them, because I try to not link what I believe to be true with how those words are typically used, because a lot of the times they don't add up. So it's like, well, great, now I have to find another word to use rather than, but it is true, because so when you go into the deeper layers of the mind, and you go into these meditative states, it really is like tuning a radio. So everything is happening within this radio box, right? Within your stereo system, but you take a knob on this stereo system and you literally tune this knob, and that changes the frequency that you're picking up. So, 94.5 is a channel that we get around here, for instance. Like that is a frequency, 9,450 hertz or something like that. Okay. So anyway, maybe it's just 94 hertz. I'm not sure, but it is a frequency, and I'm sure about that. And the frequency is measured in hertz. And so all of these different radio station channels are able to exist at the same time, right? Because we're all existing in the same space, but on different levels. And here's that word that can imply value judgments, and I want to get into that in a minute. It implies different levels of reality. So, the country channel, the talk news radio channel, and the rock channel they're all happening at the same time. You can't listen to them all at the same time. You've got to tune into one or the other, or you get static. That's very similar to the mechanism that's going on when you're tuning into, in the broadest sense, the astral realm. And so the easiest realms to kind of tune into is the elemental realms, because they are very similar to the frequency, the channel that we're used to tuning into here on Earth.
Yeah.
They are, it's only slightly off, so it's a lot easier to perceive. And the reason I hate to try to use these terms that imply some sort of hierarchy is because we start to think, when we hear terms higher and lower, oh, higher means good and lower means bad. And
or like one means they have more power than the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case. Some of them, I use the term density, but even term has been convoluted and taken to mean something bad.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being dense. There's nothing wrong with being embodied.
Yeah.
It is a manifestation of the divine emanation.
Maybe that's a good base level statement to make, is like, just because we use higher or lower doesn't necessarily mean one is better or worse.
Yeah, everything just really is.
It's kind of like, negative and positive. I teach this to my students very early on. It's like, we have negative ions that are good for us. You know, and we can associate negativity. That's why I teach them, instead, we say things like incorrect and harmful instead of negativity and things like that. Right. But what you're saying with all these layers in reality, like, this is also how I understand and teach our ability to channel healing messages, empathic, psychic, mediumistically. I often liken it to the idea of, like, there's text messages and radio signals and satellite TV flowing through us right now, but we're not tuned into it.
Exactly.
It's kind of like how we say God's always speaking. Are you listening?
Right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
So I think you're doing a great job of explaining that.
You start getting into the cosmology of things, and again, in Ptolemaic, Ptolemy was when was he? Was this like the first, around the 1st century CE or AD, right? Mm-hmm. He was a philosopher, he was an astrologer, he was a lot of different stuff. But basically, he came up with this model of the universe, which is what a cosmology is, and he placed these elemental realms around Earth. And he did so in a specific order that makes sense if you start looking into alchemy. Mm-hmm. So this is where you start getting into the alchemical properties of the elements and the alchemical cycles and all of that fun stuff with alchemy. If you study alchemy along with your traditional witchcraft knowledge of the elements, you will gain a much deeper understanding of the elements. I'm not going to go too much into the order and things like that, because in reality, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. What I will say also to the newcomer is that you're going to run into some discrepancy. There's no set way, any of this elemental stuff should be laid out, especially when you start getting into elemental correspondences, for instance. Mm-hmm. So in Ptolemaic cosmology is what I follow. It says that Earth is the densest, the element of Earth. It's the closest to where we're at now. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference between the Earth element and Earth, the planet. Yeah. So, there's a lot of overlap there, obviously. But when we're talking about the elements, especially someone who's very new to this, you kind of pick it up intuitively, but I actually don't see people just lay this out for you. When we're talking about the elements, these old Western occultists were actually describing states of matter. Yeah. So when we're talking about the earth element, don't think so much as, the planet Earth and the trees and the this and the that. Yeah. It does include that, yes. However, it includes manifestation itself. Yeah. It includes solid matter. Materialization. Yeah. So remember in chemistry class, one of the first things we learned, and they didn't have this kind of stuff back then. So when you were talking about in alchemical terms, which is the precursor to chemistry, alchemy was, they talked in terms of elements. So when they talked about earth, they're talking about solid material. So your solids. Then they said water. That was your liquids. It's not just H2O as we would know it now in modern times. It's all liquids, period. So it could be your pee. It can be your spit. It's anything. It could be ammonia, the chemicals under the counter. It can be literally anything that is a liquid. Yeah. Next thing you have is air, solid, liquid, gas. We still even say it in that order, which is amazing, because that's the Ptolemaic order of things. Interesting. So The next one is your air, and we're going from densest to lightest, and this is from Ptolemy. Okay, so people may have different understandings of this. Yeah. So the next one would be considered air, and these are your gases, your vapors, literally on the periodic table, right? So, typically we see this as the air we breathe, but there are other forms of gases, right? Like helium, nitrogen, things like that. So this is all of your gases. And then the next thing we have, and this is very interesting because it's like the ancients knew that the next logical step to take was that, it's fire, of course. And we've only just now learned kind of recently, actually, that fire is almost a fourth elemental state. And it's like a plasma is what they call it. And fire is a plasma. So if you kind of want to associate it like that, you can. But the next one is fire. And they believed that fire was the least dense, the farthest away from Earth, and the closest out of the elements to the spiritual realms. That's just in Ptolemaic cosmology what they believe. Now, if that's hitting your ears weird, and I'm sure, this is the Christian Wish podcast, so I'm sure that it is hitting a lot of people weird, right? Because, there's kind of two schools of thought on this. You're either a fire-centric thinker, where you think fire is the closest element to spirit and the farthest away from the density of Earth, or you think air is the closest to spirit and the farthest away from the density of Earth. And there's arguments for both. And so don't become confused when sometimes you read texts and things written by different people where people are placing, this is where you get fire in the east or air in the east. And there's this big discrepancy, well, is wands, for instance, is wands the element of fire or is it the element of air? Is swords the element of fire, the element of air? And so when you start getting into these kind of particulars and these correspondences and things, pick and research a worldview, or just honestly, you don't even have to research it.
What feels more intuitive?
What intuitively choose which one. I've tried both. Okay, I've tried both. I've put air in the east for a very long time casting circles and had no problems.
Maybe we should touch on that real quick. So,
okay, go ahead.
For instance, by the way, just so we're clear, Lux is fire-centric, I am air-centric. So I knew immediately she was about to go into this. It's like I picked up on it because we've had this conversation before.
Oh, it's a great philosophical occult debate.
Oh my God, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
We love it. It gets us absolutely everywhere. So for beginners, the elements in the most basic understanding are the forces of creation that you call into a circle to bring forth and to help power your magic, right? So for me, coming from a Christian witch standpoint, I'm going to just throw this out there really quickly and then move on to, since I think, long story short, it'll all tie together. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so for me, I look at the elements as if God was like shooting out his creative power and it hit like some cosmic prism and split into different rays. Okay, it's almost like facets of God's creative power divided into the four elements. Okay, and so when we call upon the elements, we're literally tapping into that part of God's power, creative power, that part of his grace, his operational power to change things like that. And I agree with everything that's been said so far. Like there are realms there. I've been there. And there are angels and spirit beings that are from the kingdom of heaven that are governing these realms.
Yeah.
So anyways, moving forward, if you haven't heard anything about elements, well, we're talking about like fire in the east or fire or air in the east. We're talking about in the circle. You're calling. Calling in them into the circle. So you typically, again, that's just intuitively what feels best to you. When I cast a circle, I start in the east and I call upon air. And my reasoning is because I associate air as the lightest substance. And we often have this conversation. Like, it's the whole argument of like, fire can't burn without oxygen. Oxygen can't burn without a spark. Like, it's the whole, like, they're both needed. And it's like really what feels right to you. And there's endless arguments there. So for those of you who don't like my associations, which are like least dense would be air, fire, water, earth. Then maybe you like how do you say it, Ptolemaic? I always get it wrong. Ptolemaic worldview where it's fire, air, water, earth.
Yeah.
For me, I don't think it makes the biggest difference other than like at some point it's going to matter to you as you develop because you're going to be associating mentally with these things,
Yeah.
but don't get too hung up on
Yeah,
it, basically.
don't get hung up on it because, like I said, I spent the majority of my. I've only just recently switched to a fire centric view once I really started doing a deep dive into alchemy and into the elements and things like that. The alchemical process, actually, the cycle of it, it goes, fire, earth, because the fire and the earth are next to each other in
Yeah.
terms of the alchemical cycle. So it goes, earth, water, air, fire. And that's how
Yeah.
things are evaporating, so to speak, right? Because you have to think
Hmm.
of an ice cube. You have an ice cube, you apply heat to it. So then it goes into the water state and then it evaporates into a liquid. And then they say it goes into like they don't say, but I think it goes into a weird element called a plasma, right?
Hmm.
And then, you apply a different cycle to it and it brings it back down to earth. So it's kind of like this
Yeah.
alchemical cycle, but it really doesn't matter which way you face. It doesn't matter which way which elements you prescribe or
Yeah.
ascribe to the directions at all. I know that Christopher Penzac, he looks to the north. I mean,
Yeah, he switches it up midway.
Yeah, he stands in the north and casts his circle standing north. I know that some people stand looking west.
Some people don't even look. They do it with their eyes closed, sitting
Right.
down.
Yeah.
And some people start with, they expand a circle from within.
Exactly. They
Like,
start from spirit, which
so just don't get hung
arguably
up
makes
on
the
it.
most sense.
I know, right?
Arguably,
Arguably, it
makes
does.
the most sense. So,
does.
and then a lot of people, they don't cast a circle. That's kind of a whole nother podcast episode, to be honest with
Mhm.
you. I personally am a fan of the circle. For a while, I wasn't. And again, until I really understood what the elements meant, and I did a deep dive on the elements.
Yeah.
I really saw the circle as something, why does this matter? Why do I need
Mm.
to do that? I agreed with protection when you're doing a magical working. So I would pray for protection and things like that. But in terms of inviting the elements in and everything like that, I thought that was very performative.
Yeah, we didn't understand what role they played.
Yeah, I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought it was kind of just like, let me just do my craft in peace. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Yeah.
need to do all of these 9 things before I do it. But now that I understand the philosophy behind it, casting the circle makes a lot more sense. And I definitely have done it both ways. And I feel a difference while doing spell work in a circle versus doing spell work out of a circle.
Yeah.
And, it just makes a lot more sense to do it in the circle in terms of the cycle of manifestation, the powers of creation coming in to feed their energy into your spell work so it can, go up, touch God, come back down, and manifest for you. It just, to me, it makes a lot more sense. So,
Yeah.
But
But again, I think, so for me, I have always been relationship focused
okay.
on the elements,
Right.
And so I'm going to be real honest, I tend to favor the elements that I have affinities for the most.
I think that's natural.
Which, by the way, is not super reflective in my natal charts, but not the point.
Interesting.
So, I have an affinity for the elements of spirit and air. By the way, spirit, aether, Awen, or I said it wrong. Anwen,
Oh, I didn't know we were going to jump into the fifth
Akasha,
element.
aether, all that fun stuff.
That's a
That's
whole
technically a
nother can
fifth
of
element,
worms.
and we'll talk to that. We'll talk about that really briefly. As a matter of fact, I'll just do it right now. Long story short, the way I look at spirit is like the fabric of existence, the 0 point energy field. When God said, "Let there be light," that is literally the power that sprung forth from nothingness, and then from that, all of the elements come from that.
Yeah.
So I tend to favor air and spirit. I did this long before I understood the orders or anything like that. So I think that's also kind of why I tend to favor the order I started with. It's because looking at it all now, anyways, not the point. This is a personal conversation at this point. Okay, back to you guys. So spirit is basically like fabric of existence. It's like, you can think of it as like literally the magic in thin air if you wanted to. Like, it doesn't really matter. Don't get too hung up on it. But it's not an actual, like, we're not talking about like a spirit standing in the corner of your room or anything like that. Like, when we say spirit, we're talking about like ether, akasha, that energy field.
Yeah, so that's another confusing thing for beginners is that we in English use the word spirit for so
many
many
things.
things.
Oh my God, so many
And
things.
so I do not like using the word spirit for the fifth element. I use the word ether. And the way I see ether is very similar to the way that you see it, actually. I believe that it is the underlying essence in every single thing that we have. There is a spiritual... I don't believe anything could be manifest if it wasn't first, come forth from the spiritual realms. And so there's almost like a spiritual, energetic mark that is within every single thing, even inanimate objects, things that we would call inanimate. I believe that there is some sort of essence or internal life force energy within that item. It's in me and you, it's in this phone, it's in this table, it's literally within and without everything. It's the glue almost that's holding everything together. And so, there's a lot we can do with that, because imagine if we could, and it's like an energetic skeleton, in my opinion. So if you could go in and somehow manipulate that aether, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could, in theory, change what an item looks like.
Yeah.
And a lot of the alchemic processes were actually trying to extract that element out of things, because it's, you ever heard of the God particle? It's kind of like that almost. It's like there's this, there's this essence of things, and it's inside everything, and it's of God.
Yeah.
It's the spiritual aspect of everything.
If you look into sacred geometry, it explains a lot of this.
Oh, really?
It all has to do with the elements, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And like spirit, the God particle, is literally an element that is what creation's built off of.
Yes.
And if you destroy it and rip it apart, it literally eats up all of creation around it.
Yeah.
That's what atomic bombs are made out of.
Oh.
They rip open the spirit element. Well, I mean, they use their scientific terms, but...
That's very interesting.
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're breaking up those particles.
Yeah.
And it's causing this collapse of reality, and everything is destroyed.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyways, we're on a totally different subject now. But yeah. So yeah, very quickly, that's what spirit is. Don't get too hung up on it.
Do you want to talk about, just hit on each of the elements?
For sure.
Just
that's what I was going to say. We should probably... So here's another thing. I know what I was saying. Okay, so I tend to favor... relationally, I never finished that statement. Okay, so I tend to favor air and spirit because I have an affinity for them, but I also have a relationship with the other realms.
Right.
I've made connection. When I call them into circle, I can feel their presence. It feels like a friend coming to help. And it's never been about understanding... I don't know, for me, I started with them, getting to know them, and I was able to recognize their essence and everything else and all the correspondences after.
Yeah.
And I'm not like a correspondence king. I don't have everything memorized. I'm just saying, I can see the elements within my day-to-day life just from having a relationship with them. Kind of like I can recognize when something is in alignment with the character of God or not, because I have a relationship with God.
Right.
Okay? So, if you're not one that likes to study, you can also do it more relationally, I guess is what I wanted to offer there. But yes, I did want to talk about the elements and the different stuff, because you can also cast circles and just commune with one element, getting to know them and things like that. So, where do we start? Fire or air? I'm just kidding.
I want to comment right quick.
Okay.
That's a really good point that you're making, is kind of on the understanding of how do I interact with these elements and things. And there's a lot of different ways to interact with the elements. Probably the easiest way is literally to get out in nature, which I'm not a fan of.
You really aren't.
Yeah,
I am.
I know.
I'm more of a fan than you are, which is so weird.
I know, it's really
I'm
weird.
usually the friend that's like, I don't want to go outside, you guys.
Yeah.
There's not AC out there.
I did actually have an experience I'd like to share over the weekend with the elements and stuff, as this stuff has been kind of working on me. This stuff really works on my subconscious. So I do a lot of work in my dreamscape. So I've been working with the elemental water in my dreams a lot. So a lot of my dreams are about swimming under the water with undines or mermaids, talking with them, communing with them. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. Of course, you can enter into the elemental realms and there's different ways to do that.
Yeah.
There's a couple different ways. I actually have been experimenting with Taoist, the things that are all over this room. So y'all can look into that. So those are Eastern symbols. It's TAW. TATTWAS. I think that's what it is.
Tattawas or something
like that. And so you can Google those, and it's these symbols, and they're flashing colors, which means it's two complementary colors. So if you look at the fire one, it's going to be a red triangle with a green background. And when you have flashing colors like that, it works on your subconscious, for lack of a better term. It allows you to go into a trance state. So what you can do is you can hang a picture of that on your wall, and you can gaze at it, just a relaxed, it's not a stare, it's not like staring intently, okay? It's a relaxed gaze, and you stare at it for a while, and then you should be able to shift your eyes to, to the blank wall behind it. Hopefully it's a white wall, it works best, and you should see the negative image of that.
So, it's kind of like an optical illusion. Like when you stare at something on a paper and you close your eyes, you can see it in your head.
Yes. Well, that's actually activating the third eye.
Yeah.
So we can actually, on another podcast when we talk about activating the third eye and, things like that, we can kind of go over this. Yeah, activating, right?
Quote, unquote.
Well, it's kind of, I say
it's more like just recognizing it again.
It's using a muscle. It really is a muscle. And so when I talk about, like, using a muscle you've never used before, it is kind of like an activation.
Yeah, totally.
So anyway, you do that, and then you try to hold that image, and once you can hold that image for a sufficient time, because it'll probably blink out of your mind's eye for a while, until your mind's eye is trained to hold that. So once you hold it for a while, you can expand that into a doorway, and you can actually walk through that doorway. And that's how you enter into the elemental realm. So I did that last week. I've been practicing it. That is by far the quickest and easiest way I've actually found to get into the elemental realms.
That's cool.
Christopher Penzak teaches a different way. I know, Chosen, you teach a different way for your students,
it's
too.
Very similar to Penzak's.
Interesting. Okay, so it's all...
It's pretty much just, I think, if I'm not mistaken...
It's like the same methodology.
I think it's the same one, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's certain exercises I'm like, listen, these are not mine. And I tell you, there's a reason my course is affordable. And it's because I haven't written every single thing in there. I'm sharing my notes and my philosophy and synthesis. But, and like helping it make sense to you. Not the point. The point is, I think that one, it's either heavily influenced or it's almost the same exercises.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it. And so... That's how I connected with the elemental realms, is going to them and looking around them and, kind of going in and out of that door. So that's how I started connecting with them. My experience, I went to the beach and I stood right on the coastline.
Oh my God, it just triggered a memory for me. Go ahead.
And, right where the water is like just hitting up to the sand. And so I realized the sun was like shining, and of course you're on the coast, so the wind is blowing, and I realized like standing right here was a very special and intense place to be, because all four elements were hitting me at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You have the water coming in, you're standing on the sand, you've got the light of the sun, the brightness, the heat of it blazing on you, and then you've got the wind whipping you. And you're just in this place where all four elements are just there. And it's so interesting because a coastline is something that we can't build on.
Yeah.
Because it's constantly changing. Our footprints don't even stay in the sand for long there.
Yeah.
So, like, we can't, that is like a small piece of, like, unadulterated, land that we can't, as human beings, we can mess it up for a second, but even if we throw trash there, the ocean just takes it. I mean, it stays in the ocean, so don't throw trash there. But what I'm saying is that it's like these four elements are coming together at this spot in such a way that it doesn't allow anything to be stagnant. Something is constantly manifesting there. Something is constantly changing there. And so I had a little awakening and a realization of a revelation of all those, all the elements and things like that. So you can just going out in nature.
You don't have to master visualization or anything like that. And again, this is not any step-by-step instructions for you guys. But yeah, I do the same thing. When I first started, I would, especially with air, I would I think a really good place for starting for starters, is to connect on the physical plane. I think it's easy, but like I don't mean just like light a fire and honor the image of the fire. I mean like try to like
I can't stand that.
I can't stand that stuff sometimes. It's so like first of all, nothing's happening here. Okay. It is once you're intentional about it. Anyways, my point being, you can connect with them. For instance, I used to go walking and when I would get exhausted or need a literal second wind, I would close my eyes and I would imagine the edge of my energy merging with the air. And I would see the air begin to glow with the color I associate with air, which is yellow and sometimes a light blue. And I would see it almost swirl around me and almost as if my body like breathed it in.
Yeah.
And I was re-energized. I was revitalized. I literally had a second wind. I was ready to go. And I do that often. That's a very easy energetic exercise you can do. I like to hug a tree. I'm a tree hugging fool. I love it. Okay, and not because I'm like, let's protect the trees. Like I think that's wonderful. I do support that. Not my journey. I am literally hugging trees because it grounds me, but I can feel the tree. Like there's love there. Like I have a special tree I hug next to one of my favorite metaphysical stores here in Houston. I always, even when I pass it up, because there's also like the place we go karaokeing right across from it. And so even at nighttime, if I'm down there, I'll hug that tree. So anyways, not the point. The point is that you can do this intuitively. You can also get a candle for each of the elements. My personal associations are yellow for air, or red for fire, blue for water, and green for earth. And then I use purple or white for spirit. And if you want to just meditate in your room, light that candle and just say, I ask the energy of air to be present and let me get to know your energy. It's very simple. You don't have to get crazy, okay? Now keep in mind, these are not deities, these are not spirits, you're not worshiping them, you're not making deals with them, it's nothing like that. So don't get freaked out, because I know a lot of people, they think, oh, elementals, and then all of a sudden they start thinking about fairies and the elemental realms, and that's a whole different thing. It's not even how that works, but, well, anyways, not the point. Not this podcast.
Not this podcast.
Not this podcast. That's further cosmology. Don't worry, you're not like summoning spirits to come like into your soul and take over. That's not how it works. As a matter of fact, in Christian cosmology, there's an order of the angelic realms, okay? And they're divided into 3 sects, and each sector has 3. So there's like 9 altogether, and it's like groups of 3. The middle sect, the one in the very middle, is called the virtues, and they're actually in charge of the elements.
Oh, cool.
And so these are who I look at as like the governing angelic beings of the elemental realm. So don't freak out. You're not going to get hurt. I mean, you could be drained. I mean, if you go on some intense vision quest, you might need to eat a snack after. But, I mean, chances are you're not going to get sucked into that if you're just starting. So, and when you get there, you'll be a little bit more educated. So
what I'll say, like from a protection standpoint, because I believe in like educating so that you do, you are aware of things, so, I would say that as with anything, if you're going to work with that thing, it should have a purpose. So like just calling up the element of fire just because you want to see if you can and just whatever, I personally wouldn't do that. I would make sure, okay, let me call in the element fire for this specific task that I have. Maybe and we're going to get into kind of why would you ever want to call in the element of fire, for what purposes and things like that. But long story short, fire is, the element of passion, drive, determination, it's life force, it's energy, it's courage. So if I was, really nervous, let's say, to go into a job interview or something like that, I could call in and evoke the element of fire within and, plead with the spirits there or plead with the virtues there, whatever beings that you are connecting with, to help you, to give you the confidence and the passion to do and nail this job interview. So me personally, I'm not going to call up an element into my house or something like that and just, okay, nice to meet you, and let it roam free. So that's just one thing, because I kind of just, I know this is weird, but I honor their time, I honor their energy, and I honor like the element. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the purpose for me,
Okay.
like doing that,
Yeah.
the purpose is to get to know them.
Right.
Okay, so as the beloved of Jesus,
Right.
we are given everything in all of creation, and we are to know those things. And so if I want to get to know the element of air and get to sense its energy,
Yeah.
like I'm not calling it to just come hang out and wander the house.
Exactly.
Like I'm calling it in. By the way, you should do this in a circle. I don't know if I just made that clear. In a circle. Because it's setting it apart. It's saying this is sacred.
Exactly.
You bring it in. You're saying, okay, I would just like to get to know your energy. I would just like to be able to recognize it. And maybe you ask it to impart healing to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But you don't just call and be like, okay, come hang out.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
So, and then when you're done, you dismiss it. You say, thank you for coming. Farewell.
Yeah, we call that a license to depart. So, if you want to, you can learn a banishing ritual, but honestly, just license to depart is fine. If you've given the element a task of some sort, help me to nail this interview, educate me in your ways of healing, help me to use, like for me with the element of earth, it's like, help me to use my intelligence for good, and not just seek knowledge for knowledge's sake, but seek knowledge for the enlightenment of myself and for others, to put this knowledge to practical use.
Yeah.
So that is the task, and then I give that element the license to depart, like, go out, transmute, go heal people, go do something, you know what I mean? Don't hang around here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I guess we've touched on, I know you kind of like in conversation touched on it, but like very basically, like maybe a couple of words, what would you associate the elements with? I think for me, like if I'm just going to be like one word, I would do, like starting with air, it would have to do with mind.
Yeah.
Or, mind. That would do fire. It'd have to do with probably like force. With water, it would be feeling. And with earth, it would be stability. Like, and I'm sure maybe I would pick 4 different words on another day, but like, just giving like, and you can use a couple of words. You don't have to do just one word, okay?
Yeah. So the weird thing is like this is kind of like what emanation, what plane, like where are we stopping at on this elevator of permeate?
Okay, so let's for beginners trying to get to know the character of elements.
Okay, so the next after the physical emanations, the next thing up I would say is that earth is associated with your body. So things of the body, processes of the body, movement, physical things, cars, things that, the body really. The next thing would be water. For me, that'd be like emotion. So you said feelings. So that's kind of, with our body, that's, again, if you think about the levels of this, like we're familiar with our body. Yeah. We're in it. You know what I mean? But emotions, not everybody's familiar with. And that tells me that we're going into a territory that is a little bit more, it's not as dense. It's not something that we are all, familiar with. You know what I'm saying? So emotions can be elusive to some people who are not, in touch with them, right? Then you have, for me, air, and that's the mind. Okay, and the mind can be, again, it's a tricky place. I mean, you have people who spend their whole lives, psychologists and things, studying the human mind because it's so mysterious, it's so elusive, it's so convoluted. And so you have, kind of that thing that's just rare. And, I see it as like a scale of rarity. So you're moving up, we're venturing into territory that's kind of starting to go above our heads, if that makes any sense. Okay. And then it includes the conscious mind. And I also believe it includes the subconscious mind, but I associate that also with water sometimes. But that again is a different level of understanding, like where you want to stop on this elevator. Then the next one is fire, and I believe that fire is the will, is your will. And again, to me, the will is the most elusive because we all have the true will and we all have a personal will. You know what I'm saying? And there's God's will, right? So, you know, am I in alignment with God's will or am I not in alignment with the will of creation, the will of my best good, the will of my highest potential, things like that. So, you know, that's kind of following your heart, following your soul's calling. Why am I here on this earth? To me, that's the most elusive element of all. Because, you know, it's for me, the whole point of the spiritual path is trying to figure out one's true will, trying to be in alignment with it, trying to come into alignment with God's will for us, you know, our highest good, our highest purpose. We don't just immediately know what that is, you know, especially if we're bogged down by a lot of the materialism and the traumas that we go through on this planet. And we haven't done the healing. So, you know, we haven't climbed the tree of life, so to speak. We haven't had the Kundalini awakening, whatever many terms you want to, you know, say. We haven't had the genuine encounters with Holy Spirit yet. We haven't had those experiences where we are enlightened towards our true will. And it doesn't just happen all at once. These are lifelong processes. We come more and more and more into alignment with who we really are as a person.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the will is associated with the fire element.
Yeah.
That's just one, and
I associate will with fire too.
That's just one level of understanding the elements, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, like, that gives people who've never done anything with elements more than enough to contemplate.
Yeah. Body, emotions, mind, will.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, people say mind, body, spirit. You know, there's you're missing emotions. In my opinion, you're missing will, but spirit's taken care of by aether. So that's what that is.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know what I was thinking a minute ago. Oh, I was kind of wishing I would have said drive instead of force for fire. Because I feel like that goes in perfect line with what you were saying.
Oh, no, drive, yeah. Drive, that's
yeah.
another word I would use. I would use determination, personal power. In fact, fire is typically associated with red.
Yeah.
And I know that in the tarot, whenever I see red, I see a person who is standing in their personal power.
Interesting.
You know, the Magician card, for instance, he's in a red robe. The Emperor card, he's in a red cape. On the Sun card, the little baby is wrapped in a red cloak. So there's whenever I see people dressed in red in the tarot, it lets me know that they are in alignment with their true will and what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Standing in there, you know. But, you know, another aspect of fire is an element I can sit here and just talk endlessly about. I guess I have an affinity for fire.
I believe you do, my dear.
So, anyway, so it's the courage, the will to carry out something, the passion. Of course, you can start getting into sex and things like that with passion. I'm not going to get into any planetary correspondences because
too much.
It's too much for this podcast. Maybe we'll talk about the planets in another episode, but that is the next logical step is you learn the elements and then you start learning the planets.
Yeah.
So
I just want you to know this episode on the elements is not like any other episode I've ever listened to on any other podcast. It's always like the water is your tears and the moisture in your body and the flowing rivers, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it on a basic level, but like it's so much more than that.
So that's what I was saying. That's what I kind of wanted to tell the beginner is like, yes, there are physical emanations in which we can see these elements like they're talking about. Yes, the blood flowing through our veins is a liquid. Yeah.
Sure
like
is.
That is the water element. You know what I'm saying? But once you understand very simply any liquid ever, whether in your body, without your body, the microcosm, the macrocosm, doesn't matter. If it's a liquid, it's associated with the water element. When you understand the solid liquid gas thing, you can kind of short circuit all that. You're like, okay, got that, because those are your physical emanations. Yeah. We've got that covered.
That's just the physical layer of reality.
That's just the physical layer. So what's next? Then we kind of get into the mind, body, spirit, emotions, and will. Okay, what comes after that? Maybe we start venturing into more of the emotional standpoint. So there could be, and this is why I need y'all to be able to see a board. Okay,
Yeah,
because it's a matrix.
By the way, we offer master classes
Yeah.
and workshops.
It's a matrix, okay? So you've got things. How do you even say this? You have layers happening on each of the elemental realms. Okay?
Yeah, there's layers within layers.
Okay, so you have earth of earth. Are y'all following? These are sub-elements. You have earth of earth.
Mm-hmm.
You have water of earth.
Mm-hmm.
You have air of earth.
Yeah.
You have fire of earth. So earth of earth would be, what would you say?
Earth of earth?
Earth of earth.
Oh, girl, you know how many different things are flying through my mind right now? I have no
Dirt,
idea.
salt,
Yeah, I was thinking like mud, caves, rocks.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. So then you have you have water of earth.
Water of earth,
oceans,
this would be oceans.
rivers,
yeah.
your blood, your tears, all the things,
Yeah.
right? Okay, y'all are following. Now you have air of earth. You have gases, the wind, you know what I mean? The air, okay? Then you have fire of earth, literally candles, fire. Okay, so that's where most people stop.
Yeah.
Is the sub-element of earth seen in the elements, okay?
Yeah.
That is true.
Take it up one level for them.
Then we take it up a level into the realm of water.
Okay.
So now you have earth of water. And what is that? Then you have water of water, air of water.
My mind is swarming with
fire
possibilities
of water.
now.
And that's the point of this, right?
Yeah.
And so what is coming out of our mouths right now when we move into this water world is going to be completely different than what you're thinking or what, Chosen's thinking or what I'm thinking. We're going to have, it's not a hard and fast rule. These are not truths. These are not things that can be quantifiably proven. We're starting to venture into the realm of water because we're not here anymore. And if I really want to open y'all's mind, what we're venturing into is the realm of the moon. We have now left the sub-lunar world. And we are in the astral realm.
That's going to confuse so many people.
That's going to confuse people. Okay, so if you're following me, heads up, you're advanced, okay? So you're, like I said in the beginning.
I know there's so many things I've been wanting to comment on that I've just been staying silent. And like, I've been noticing, I'm just like, because you're just hitting all these great points. I'm just like, I haven't said anything, but I'm like, if I say anything, it's just going to cause so much confusion.
Yeah. It's like I said in the beginning, the elements permeate
all layers of existence.
All layers. So you have elements acting on the elemental realms.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's when you first started talking about, a minute ago when you said, like, for instance, like the earth within earth, the water within earth. I literally also, I saw like a chart in my head of each of our layers of reality. Yeah. And like how the elements manifest in each of those layers. Yes. And it's very similar, if not the same thing at some point.
And I've actually sat down for about a week and tried to flush this entire chart out like you're talking about.
Interesting.
And I got incredibly frustrated.
I bet.
Because this is not something that you can sit
really
down
separate
and intellectualize and categorize into these neat little boxes that make sense for our three-dimensional minds. This is dealing in extraordinarily abstract and advanced concepts of the elements. So this is something that has to be intuitively understood and lived and experienced. And, again, the way to do that, in my opinion, is, yes, you can get out in nature. I like visiting the elemental realms. You can even speak to, the virtues and have, one of the elemental virtues like Chosen's talking about as your guide and get them to educate you and do some astral journeying in that way and kind of receive your education there. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but, don't be like me and, I already know the elements and write them off. Because you know one layer of the elements.
Yeah.
You knew the earth layer. So there's all these other layers to get to and to study and to understand. And that really opened my eyes.
It also puts into perspective when people talk about, like, and just in life, using the word element and how it's so versatile.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, oh, there's so many different elements involved over there. Like, they don't really understand that. They're talking, like, that's a mystical concept.
Yeah.
There's so many different layers to the elements in general. Like, even just getting to know someone. It's like getting to know the elements within them.
Yeah.
There's just different layers.
So if you guys want to know like a full in-depth understanding of the elements,
brain blast just out of revelation. Don't let me forget to tell you afterwards. Okay.
If y'all want to, message us. We can set up an appointment or something like that, and we can really get down, a textbook dissertation. We didn't want to get onto that.
Yeah, we're talking very broad here. So, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's statements I started and didn't finish,
Right.
as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so if y'all really want a mentorship style, almost like a one-on-one tutor session or something like that, feel free to reach out to either of us. The last thing I like to hit on, just to kind of wrap this all up, is I don't see people hit on this really either, especially in beginner understandings of elements. Do you want to hit on the elementals? The elementals?
Well, so here's the deal. So yeah, we can. But it's like, what is their purpose? And then it's all that other stuff. There's so many more questions to it. So I guess what I would say is I want to hear what it is you wanted to share about them. And if I have anything to comment, I will. Okay. Because that in itself is a whole book.
Yeah.
So
all I was going to say is that in the Western mystery tradition, and I think it Agrippa? I don't know. These old farts that created all this stuff.
Cornelius.
Yeah, good old Cornelius, Henry Cornelius Agrippa, right? He wrote 3 books of cult philosophy, okay? So that's where a lot of our understanding comes from, and it's all trickled down into, our magical theory that we have today. So basically another thing to know about the elements in the elemental realms is that there are these entities that exist there as well as on Earth. It's just whether or not we're listening, right? Whether or not we can perceive them. And they are entities made of literally one element. So, this is where we get a lot of our folklore too, where you get the mythology of mermaids and of genies and of all of these different things we see in folklore. These are all like elemental spirits. These are all people, these are people that are seeing, perceiving. I like to say perceiving when I'm talking about the mind's eye, instead of seeing, because that's a whole nother podcast episode.
We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. I saw you getting fired up.
It's all in the mind's eye, okay? It's happening in the mind's eye. You're not actually seeing things out in here, okay? So, anyway, so with fire, it is said that there are these fire elementals, and they go by many names. There's a lot of different entities on that realm too, but at its base level, you have what's called salamanders. Okay, and I know that's weird because it's like what salamanders? If you don't resonate with salamanders, you can call them drakes. Yeah. Okay, little fire dragons. Okay, and if you kind of bring up a visual of a flickering flame, not on a candle, on a campfire.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a little dragon.
It looks like the back of a dragon, right? The spikes and stuff. Okay, and then you have water. You have the undines, which are
mermaids,
like water
type things.
Yeah, water nymphs, mermaids, sirens, things like that.
The sylphs with the air.
You have sylphs with the air. These are described as like almost fairy-like.
I was going to say, I feel like they're what I think of when I think of like a fairy in the wind or something.
Yeah, and they
ethereal.
Surf the wind. Yeah. They have a very special relationship with trees. And if you imagine the light shining down through a tree and the wind slightly blowing, and you see the light hitting the tree leaves and it looks like the leaves are sparkling, that's the sylphs. Okay, and then you have the last one is the gnomes, the little people, the elves, the gnomes, things like that, and that exists in the earth realm. Okay, and not Earth where we're at. I'm talking about the Earth elemental realm.
My mom loves a gnome.
Yeah,
they're so cute. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, so that's it. And these are just. They're spirits. They're different entities that exist among us, around us, within, without us.
Yeah.
They are keepers of the elements. That's the way that I see them.
I feel like they're, again, manifestations
I think they're personified versions of the elements.
That's what I was going to say. They're almost like, it's almost like if I were to, their energy formed in like a little character or something.
Yes.
Yeah, or like a little being or something. Yeah, I don't feel like it's not a spirit being, so to speak, where it's like an angel or anything. I think it's more just like It's the personality of the energy itself.
And they're very different than like something like an angel or
Mm-hmm.
us, for instance, because they are made out of just one element.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not complex beings like how we are.
Yeah.
So they don't have like a lot of, you know, free will and different things like that. Like they are like, we make fire, we make fire, we make fire. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like they're like, I don't know, is pygmy? Can you even say pygmy anymore? Or is that like a non-PC? I'm
no
sorry if
idea.
I offended anyone, but
I
anyway.
doubt you did.
Anyway,
Like they're like minions.
they're like, yeah.
Like in the
They're
Despicable Me universe, not like
Yes.
minions, like your little evil slaves.
Yeah, right. They're collective as well. Like when I
Yeah.
have spoke to the sylphs, they speak in the plural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, no one's saying go out and worship. No one's saying go out and sell your soul.
I don't worship.
Because no, but I know, but like you understand, for people coming from a Christian background, this is what we've been told: is these things are evil. Even in fairy tales, this is
Yeah.
why they say, "Oh, those are demons," is because in ministry they know that they stem from concepts in the spiritual realm, but they don't understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
I haven't had any demonic experience working with them at all.
yeah, don't ever be afraid. You have all authority and power, no matter what. Like even if you are afraid, but they're not out to get you. They're not out to trick you or anything
No.
like that. But
They
yeah.
feel like one element. I know it's like
Just feel like the personality of the element, yeah.
But it literally, that's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like you're talking to another being or anything. It just feels
Yeah.
like one element squeezed down into a little form in
Yeah.
its purest state.
It's like that element is manifesting in a way to communicate with you.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and a little character curve.
Yeah,
or
that's
whatever.
what I think anyway.
So, all right, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up because we're getting a notification that we've been talking too long on the. But love you so much. I know we probably just gave you lots more questions and answers, but we wanted to tell you there's so much more to the elements and have a conversation. And honestly, I kind of really enjoyed this because you did a lot of the talking, and I was, and I.
Sorry.
But you understand is that no, because I haven't got to hear your updated views on the elements yet.
Oh.
So that was very fun for me to see, because before it was kind of like, she didn't really, like a while back, I was kind of like, I don't really see anything there. But
Yeah.
having heard everything now,
Oh yeah, I've done a lot.
I'm
I've done a deep
just
dive.
like, hey, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, we're gonna wrap up. We have like 15 seconds. Love you so much. You can find Lux at which website?
LuxIntuitiveTherapy.com.
And you can go to ChristianWitchHTX.com if you want to find me, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.